I'm Lizzy Oppenheimer, and I'm the senior photo editor at InStyle and the creative director of Nicotine Magazine, as you said. I studied photography myself. I went to Parsons. Before that, I went to a small community college in LA where I studied photography as well. And when I graduated from school, I got a grant to pursue a large format fine art photo project. And so I did that for a bit. I really did want to be a photographer when I went to school, but I quickly found out that I'm not a freelancing type. That for me to sit in my apartment day in, day out, and try to pursue work is not really, like, I like to have a community of people to sort of work with and bounce ideas off of and work towards building something together. And so I found photography to be a bit lonely, I guess. So when I was in college, I had interned at Teen Vogue in the photo department and got a little bit of a taste of what that's like to be a photo editor. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll be interested in that. I've always loved fashion magazines. I've always loved fashion. So I just reached out to the people that I worked with at Teen Vogue and a million other people. And I actually got a job at InStyle as a full-time photo intern, but it was paid. So it was different from being like a college intern. And I did that. And then from there, I went to Marie Claire. And at Marie Claire, I was the assistant photo editor when I started, and then I became the associate photo editor, and then I became the photo and bookings editor. So that was sort of new, that last, I mean, each step was new, but the last step was different because I then also booked all of the models and hair and makeup for the entire magazine, in addition to my roles as a photo editor. Then from Marie Claire, I went to Refinery 29 for a year where I worked on their native advertising team. So I would come up with creative direction for, say, Refinery 29 plus H&M. And I would make a creative brief similar to what you do when you work at an ad agency and send that to the client. They would approve it or not. Then I would assign the photographer and stylist and hair and makeup and produce the shoot and set designer and all of that stuff. Then after being at Refinery 29, I started at InStyle, where I'm the senior photo editor and do normal photo editor things. We also book models. We don't really have a bookings department. Meanwhile, while all of that was happening, I co-founded Nicotine Magazine with Mark Lim. He's the editor-in-chief. I'm the creative director, but we're really partners in it. And we started that actually when I was interning at InStyle. So we've been doing it actually for a long time, like the entire time that I've been working professionally. I've also had that as my side project. So when Jamal approached me, I thought it could be interesting to talk about what you do when you get hired, because I feel like a lot of photographers, I like working with newer photographers just as much as I like working with photographers that have been doing it for 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. But I do think that it's something that you don't learn necessarily as a photo assistant or in photo school, is what to do once you get hired. And obviously I can only speak to getting hired by a commercial fashion magazine. I haven't, I've worked while at Marie Claire, for example, assigning photojournalists and all different types of photography, but mainly talking about being at a fashion magazine. And I think that one thing that's really important to remember is that this photo editor that you're interacting with who just hired you has, like, I don't know, layers of people above him or her. And although that person is your point of contact, that nothing can just go through only that person. It's just like not the way that fashion magazines work. And you're never going to be talking to the editor-in-chief. So no matter who you're talking to, usually there's always somebody that things have to go but be run by. The other thing, so how that impacts you as a photographer is you have to think about lead time that is necessary if you have a particular vision or an idea for a shoot. There has to be enough lead time for this person that you're interacting with to pitch that idea to whoever is above him or her. I feel like a lot of photographers that I work with either aren't aware of that or they forget that or something. So it's like, oh, morning of the shoot, let's like change the background to a pink. And it's like, actually, you can't just do that because I've had this red background approved by like 6 people. And we're thinking about it in the context of the entire magazine, not just your one picture. The other thing is that this photo editor that you're working with has like 15 other yous that they are also talking to and 15 other at least things that they're working on. So I feel like a lot of photographers have anxiety when a photo editor doesn't, not only photographers, stylists, set designers, whatever, if a photo editor doesn't reply to you right away, it's not because they don't care about you or you're not important or what you said was stupid or whatever. It's just that there's like all these other things going on at the same time. It's like a lot of balls to hold in the air. I think also just sort of like to go through what's expected of you. Say you got hired to do a fashion shoot with a model in New York on a particular date. Those are the only details that you have. Sometimes the magazine will have an idea of roughly what they want that shoot to look like. So if that's the case, sometimes an idea of exactly, like there's a whole, spectrum. So let's say the magazine has a very specific idea of what they want. Like we saw this reference photo in Paris Vogue and we want exactly this. Then they'll send it to you. You'll know what they want you to do. Usually I think it's best for photographers, sorry, to try to interpret that reference themselves. So say I send you a reference and you're thinking about, okay, how does this reference translate into my photography? Like, why did this person hire me with this reference? And if it's super clear why they did, then that's great. If it's not, like say you shoot exclusively with an on-camera flash and the reference that I send you is like daylight of somebody like in a field and it doesn't really look like your picture, I feel like that's a good thing to bring up. To be like, hey, what appealed to you about this reference? Why are you sending this to me? Is this how you want the lighting? Is this a styling reference? Is this a posing reference? Is this a location reference? Like really try to clarify what the reference is pointing towards. And depending on what the photo editor says, then you can make your own mood board that is perhaps more in line with your aesthetic and your style, but that touches on the elements of the reference that we started out with. So say it's like, because I sent you this reference because I want to shoot in a grassy field. Sometimes that's the reason. Like, I think a lot of photographers also like freak out, like they get this reference and it's not exactly the type of picture that they would take. So it's important to find out what the reference is about. Other times shoots are way more freeform. Like I'll assign something where I have an idea roughly of what I'm thinking, but I personally love working with photographers that have their own references to bring to the table and are going to present an idea to me based on whatever I send them to kind of riff off of. That like I love that sort of collaboration. I think that as a photo editor, I have certainly an idea of how we could shoot something and have it look good, but I'm also hiring a photographer because I want their creative input. So I think it's very important for photographers to be looking at images. I think a lot of photographers don't necessarily look at images, but the ones that I see that work a lot, they are always looking at images and they can easily like pull together a mood board of how they want to shoot something. So that's important. I think also when it comes to sending the final images, something that I notice with newer photographers is I'll get just like raw files. And that's not really appropriate. You should, when you are submitting an edit, submit any images that we marked together on set. You know, usually we're like talking about while we're doing the shoot, like, oh, I like this one, I like that one, whatever, you're kind of making an edit. And then I think it's always good to send anything else that you like. Like you should go through your film that you just shot and make an edit and then send the edit. Like I've had photographers send me every single picture that was taken. Or, you know, say we're shooting tethered on set and you have Capture One applying different, you know, modifications to the images, and then you send me images without any of those modifications. So they're like dark, they're green, they're whatever. Like I've hired so many new photographers where I've gotten their pictures in, and like I'm on a crazy deadline always. If you told me the film's going to be in by Wednesday morning, I'm assuming it's going to be there like by Wednesday morning. And if I get it Wednesday morning at like 11 a.m., often I don't have time to go back to you and say, hey, these are dark and green. Can you fix them? So then I have to fix them, which is not ideal. What else? I don't know. I feel like you guys should ask me questions. Any questions?
You started at Marie Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And out of curiosity, you said that you created a concept and then hired a photographer to fulfill your vision.
Mm-hmm.
How do you come up with your concepts?
Mm.
I mean, is it, if I may, is it you see work of a photographer and say, gee, I really like this individual's style, but I'd like it if that was a fuchsia sky. And if you can't make a fuchsia sky, you're a garbage photographer.
So everywhere I've worked, people come up with ideas in a different way.
Right.
At Marie Claire, and even within a given magazine, different ideas come about in different ways because it's like a creative place. And so sometimes you see a photographer's work and you're like, oh my God, I love this story that they did for so-and-so. Let's have them do something like that for us. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's, you know, it's fashion based. So the fashion shows happen, right? It's like a month that fashion shows are happening. And then after they happen, usually your fashion department looks at all of the shows and maybe your fashion director is like, okay, these are the 8 biggest trends for spring. So that means one of the trends is ruffles, one is florals, one is red clothing, you know. And so then you kind of have these anchors, like, all right, we have to do a floral story. So usually you think like, okay, we're going to do a floral story. How should we shoot this floral story? How would that look good? And sometimes somebody has an idea right away. Like, oh, I want to see this floral story at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. And then as a photo editor, you think about, okay, so we want to shoot florals on a model in the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Who's the right person for this? Who have I been looking at recently that can shoot on location? That maybe you want it with natural light, can shoot with natural light. Maybe you want it lit, who can light? You know, there's so many different considerations, I think, that come into hiring someone. If it's talent, that's a whole nother layer. Like say we're gonna shoot a specific celebrity or supermodel. Maybe she's a little bit of an older woman. Who has the lighting chops that they can handle this? Who has the right personality? You know, maybe it's a difficult talent. So, and then sometimes like because I love photography and I love photographers and I love magazines and all this stuff, I'm constantly collecting images that I think would inspire a great story. So I saw this amazing show at the Met Brewer of this painter's work recently. And I took so many pictures of the fashion story that is in line with these paintings. So it just really can come from anywhere. I don't know if that's so helpful, but another way is photographers and stylists will send pitches. They'll submit a PDF. So maybe a photographer likes working with a particular stylist, and this particular stylist loves the pleats trend. So then they'll pull together, here's the clothes, and then, here's our mood board, and this are the models that we'd like, and they'll submit that. And then if everybody likes it, then we execute that. So there's a lot of different ways.
Question.
Oh, hello, online person.
From Rebecca Grant. She says, what do you recommend as the best, most effective method for reaching out to a photo editor for the first time? Email promo, print promo, or cold call, or some other method that
Definitely do not call on the phone. Do not ever. It's just, we're so busy. I can't even begin to explain how busy you are when you work at a magazine. And you can read somebody's email and like save it. Or if I get emails from photographers, even if I don't have time to look at them, I'll like double click it and keep it open on the side of my computer, so I remember to look at it later. But a phone call feels like an assault because I'm nearly always in the middle of working on like 400,000 things. Like there's like 65 emails that I need to reply to. There's 8 phone calls I need to make. 2 people are at my desk trying to talk to me at the same time, and I have a meeting I have to go to. And then you're calling me on the phone. So it really is inconvenient to receive a phone call. I think an email promo is good. And also don't email people's personal emails. I get photographers emailing me at my personal email all the time because it's like findable on the internet. And that's just, it's just like not the right way to approach working with somebody, because when I'm at work, It's a little bit different because I have Nicotine. So if you're emailing me about Nicotine, then email me at my Nicotine email, which is also findable on the internet. And then I'll be looking at your email at like 1 a.m. But if you're emailing me about InStyle or any commercial magazine that I will work at in the future, when I'm at work, I'm at work. So that's an appropriate time for me to be looking at my InStyle email address and receiving an email from you. Like there are photographers that have emailed me at my personal email, and then I get it, at like 2 a.m. or something, and then I just have to forward it to myself at my work email, because I'm not gonna personal emails are for like communicating with Seamless or your friends and family or online shopping. But yeah, I think an email promo is good. I think a mailing promo can also be good. Oh, thanks. But it's not necessary to send something in the mail, but you can. I know that a lot of photo editors, just to be honest, I don't do this, but a lot of photo editors I've worked with take all of the mail promos and put them right into the trash without looking at them. So for other people, that might not be an effective way to communicate. I think email is difficult also because everybody's so busy. So it's hard. I would say if I was a photographer, I would send an email promo once every 3 months, and I would send a mailer once every 3 months.
I was interested on consider that we are talking about, okay, somebody has been hired, okay, again. And what about the situation when we talk about the budget? It's something like, okay, considering a normal photographer, okay, I'm not saying I'm Mario Testino or something, somebody, so it's like where comes like asking what's your rate to the photographer, and when it's like, this is the budget we have, so can we talk about, it's like a conversation that can even stop there, or it's an open conversation to see where both budget, let's say, can meet up, yeah.
So with magazines, we have very strict and specific rates. there's not really a negotiation that happens except if it's a cover. So anything other than a cover, it's our rate is our rate. So I think it's probably best to approach the subject by asking, what's your budget for this? And then somebody like me will write back, our rate is $500 a day against page space. So what that means is the one day you're shooting, it's $500. And then say the story is 8 pages. Basically, you're making $500 per page, essentially. And so if the story is 1 page or 2 pages or whatever it is, you just add it up from there. And our rates, even for assistants, for digital techs, for retouching, for equipment, it's all standardized. And actually, there isn't a lot of difference from one magazine to another either in terms of what those rates are. They're sort of static. But usually photographers ask me, oh, what's your budget? And then I send back like, oh, photo assistant, $250, like, retouching, $250 per image, whatever it is. There have been instances where I've worked with photographers where we've made other types of arrangements rather than the standard rates. Like if there is travel involved in the shoot or something, and I don't have a travel budget, but like you live in LA and I'd like for you to shoot it in New York. Sometimes we'll do like, okay, even though the story is 6 pages or whatever, your fee will be a flat $1,000 because I have to pay for your travel or whatever it is. Like sometimes there are negotiations, but I don't think that you should ever feel like you can't ask what the budget is. They might write back also, depending on what magazine it is, and say 0. Because there are some magazines that have no budget. So yeah, you can always ask.
Yeah, and okay, what about it's the involving makeup artist and assistant? Maybe the photographer can find an assistant or having. What about the makeup artist? Is something that you ask the photographer, or something that it's like you have also a database of makeup artists that you like, so can jump in the. I mean, what? How many things it's on top of the photographer, and how many things it's something that you can guys deal?
Right. So usually I always ask a photographer, who do you like to work with for hair and makeup? And if they have people they like to work with, then they can send me their names and then I will get in touch with them. So it's just you sending me who you like to work with usually. If they're not available, maybe we'll like talk about it. I know some good people to recommend and have some other people. Same thing with studio or location. I'll ask, hey, do you have a studio you like to work at? Because a lot of photographers have a specific studio that they prefer, or maybe they need like lots of daylight. And so they know what studios have the best daylight so I'll ask, but then I'll book the studio. Really the only thing that photographers are responsible for booking, as far as if you're working with InStyle, it's different at different places, but you can book your own assistants and digital tech, and everything else we do it, but we work with you because we know people have certain people that they want to work with or don't want to work with. Photographers that I've worked with from Europe, for example, and they're working for me in LA, and they don't know any photo assistants there. So in that case, I will recommend assistants to them, and I'll book the assistants because it's me that has the relationship with the assistants, not them.
Okay, so the same also for retoucher, of course. It's something like
retouching is another on the photographer.
Okay.
Yes.
Because you may have a specific idea of retouching,
right?
That it's closer to the magazine palette, let's say, or something. While the photographer can be maybe, or the retoucher of the photographer can be a little bit more, let's say, extreme, consider it. So
right.
Like, I don't know.
Well, usually the photographer books their preferred retoucher and they deal with all of the communication with the retoucher. However, it does happen that the retouching comes in and it's not right. Or I guess not that it's not right. It's not up to InStyle's standards of retouching, or we know from experience that it's not going to print well because there's too much grain or it's too dark or whatever. And sometimes in that case, we will then ask you, hey, can we hire our own retoucher to work on these? And then you'll say, okay, and then we'll go into that. But yeah, usually the first thing is that the photographer works with who they want to for retouching. And if you don't have somebody, then you can say, hey, I don't have a retoucher here that I like to work with. Who do you guys like to work with? And then obviously we know so many retouchers from working with so many photographers with so many retouchers.
How often do you take a look or attention to photographers who send you letters?
Well, when I get my mail, then I do. So with a promo that's in the mail, it's just, do I like that picture or do I not like that picture? Like in 5 seconds, I can decide. And either I hang on to the promo and then I'll like look at their website or whatever, or I throw it away. Or there are some photographers that I know like regularly send me promos and I have their postcards like up in my desk area.
After that, you may hire them or not, yeah?
Let me think about yes, actually. There have been photographers that have sent me mailed in promos and I've hired them. It's happened. Not that often, but it's happened.
So let me ask you, you have these postcards in front of your monitor, taped all over your desk. A young photographer in New York is really hungry for work, wants to work for either InStyle or Nicotine. What is that young photographer, male, female photographer, makes no difference. What do they have to do to get you excited to hire them to get a job? I mean, is there a specific style or venue that appeals to you that you really want to see? I mean, here's the thing. Hypothetically, I'm hungry. I'm too old to be hungry, but I want you to hire me. What do I have to do?
The tricky thing with photography in general is that it's so subjective. So my aesthetic might be your aesthetic also. Like we might share the same vision of what we want to see out of a fashion picture. Sorry. Or we might not. But I don't think that you should morph your photography in any way to be somebody else's aesthetic. I think that that doesn't serve you well ultimately because it's so hard to be a photographer already. And I think that maybe the aesthetic that you see in the magazine right now, who knows, maybe I don't even like it.
The reason for my asking was basically a photographer is applying for a job. The same way you would submit a resume to a company. A good resume is tailored to the company's viewpoint. So I'm saying, how as a photographer can I tailor my work to appeal to you to get the end goal of an assignment?
I would say be very familiar with what types of pictures are in the magazine. So sometimes people send me promo cards, or I meet with photographers at portfolio reviews, or they send me links. And their photography is like nothing that runs in the magazine. It looks completely different. So I think it's important to be familiar with the publication that you're sending your work to. This happens a lot with Nicotine also, where photographers will send work and it's like good work, but it's like very, very highly produced, commercial, highly lit, highly retouched pictures. And that's just not on brand for Nicotine Magazine. It's like a little bit more raw. It's like not so super bright and lit and, you know, tight hot pink dresses or whatever. And so I think be familiar with the publication. That's why it's so important to look at magazines. Like photographers should be looking at every single magazine that they would ever want to work for. And even the ones they don't want to work for right now, because maybe you want to work for it later, depending on, because all the people that work at different magazines are changing all the time and everybody's always changing their aesthetic. So I think you have to do your homework. The same way with a resume, when you go in for an interview and you meet some, like I'm surprised at InStyle until very recently, we have exclusively shot celebrities, no models at all. And so many times I'll meet with photographers and they have no idea that we only shoot celebrities, which if you look at the magazine, it's really obvious because they're all celebrities. So I think you just have to be familiar with who you're applying to.
Online question from Kasha Rivas. She says, how does it work with hiring a stylist for a shoot? Is it similar to booking a makeup artist?
Booking a stylist is different than booking a makeup artist because the stylist is more integrally involved in the concept of the shoot, I would say, than the makeup artist is. So, you know, sometimes you start a shoot with a stylist and sometimes you start a shoot with a photographer. And I would say if you are working with very established stylists or very established photographers, they work really in conjunction with one another. So the same way that I would say we're working on a cover shoot, right? So I'm working with a photographer and a stylist that have both been working for a really long time. They're very established. Both of them would be contributing to who are we going to hire for hair and makeup, not just the photographer. So it's different. Also, you want to make sure that these two people want to work together. So sometimes if you start with the stylist, then you'll ask them, do you want to work with this particular photographer? If you start with the photographer, you say, do you want to work with this particular stylist? Or do you have ideas of who you want to work with as a stylist? So it's definitely different.
I have another question, kind of backtracking to your thoughts on the kind of the do's and don'ts. Can you walk through some of the other things that you really don't like to see from new photographers? You mentioned a couple and then we kind of veered off. So we get to attack that again because there's some real, and also maybe it could be stylists, makeup artists, kind of the retouchers, the whole. I'd like to hear some of that.
Things that I don't like to see or experience.
This could be during a shoot or the communication or even the initial outreach. Right?
Right. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing, generally. And I'm really like on the photographer and the stylist side. A lot of people aren't like that. But I am, because those are like my people, you know, or I feel like those are my people. I would say that for a stylist, it's important to work really well with the photographer, basically. I think that I've sometimes run into tricky situations, and it's important to communicate with the magazine. It's like when you're working with so many people on one shoot, it can be a tricky situation. So I've had experiences where a photographer and stylist are really close, for example, and they've discussed all this stuff to do with the shoot and kind of like left out the magazine. And that's not really cool to do. because even though it's editorial, like I said, we all have all these people above us. So it's like, I am 100% on board with your vision, and like, let's do what you guys want to do. But you can't kind of like go off and design a whole set in secret and then spring it on the magazine the day of. So it's important to always be communicating with everyone, I think. You know, that's why you have these massive email chains that develop where you have like everybody on one email and everybody can just kind of communicate with each other. I think that that works really well. Other new photographer things. I think that it's also important for new photographers to realize that when you're on set, you have to be kind of like the rein holder in a sense. Even though you're not the one producing the shoot, right? You have like a producer there, you have somebody who's getting everything together. Ultimately, the responsibility falls at your door more so than anybody else's. So I think it's important to like hold that responsibility and make sure that you talk to everybody on set. Like as the photographer, you should be communicating with the hair and the makeup and the manicurist and the talent and the set designer and your assistants. Like you can't just be in your little zone and like do your lighting. You have to be collaborating with all of these people. And shoots run really well when you have a photographer who comes in and who is confident about what they're doing, but who's also level-headed, who's not going to like lose it if somebody doesn't like what you just shot. And who really goes around and talks to every single person on set and makes sure that they feel important and that they know what to do, like what their job is today. So I think I see photographers where they let the stylist, for example, just talk to the manicurist and hair and makeup and decide all of that stuff. I think that's a mistake. I think that as the photographer, you should be the one who is spearheading and really involved with all of the conversations that happen.
Oh, yeah. So another question. When there is a photo shoot organized by the magazine, how many people or which person is sent by the magazine on the shooting day? As a photo editor, but also as a creative director, maybe it's different level, you know, creative director can be more in depth. So when it happened that you go in the shooting day there, you with somebody else and when you don't send anybody or you don't even show up, I don't know, what's the different level maybe of importance of the shooting that makes this?
It really depends. Sometimes on set, it'll just be me. Sometimes it'll be me and the creative director. Sometimes it'll be nobody. Now we have a new editor-in-chief at InStyle, and she likes to go on set. So we just did a shoot in London recently where she happened to be in London. And so she was the only one on set. So it really depends what the shoot is and where it is and what else is going on at the same time. So sometimes we'll have like a cover shoot and a fashion story on the same day. So different people will be going to different shoots. Or sometimes the shoot is on a Saturday and we've shot, you know, every day up until that point and everybody's exhausted and everybody needs the day off. And so nobody will go. It just really depends.
Okay. So basically, okay, when you send somebody or you go there, there is a moment where everybody agree like, okay, I guess we got the shot, let's move with a new clothing, new outfit, or it's more left to the photographer. It's like, okay, I think I got the shot, you know. Consider, no, the photographer looks everything on camera, especially, let's say, okay, when it's tethering, basically everybody can see the picture, but let's say when only the photographer can look on camera, but everybody can kind of understanding how things is going. So it's something like a dialogue and say, okay, I guess guys, we all agree that we got something. Can we move on or what?
It really depends on the photographer. So there are some photographers who they'll say that they've got the shot. And there are some photographers where I need to say that we've got this shot. And I kind of just interpret based on like knowing this person or how much time has elapsed, what I should kind of do in that situation. Because some photographers will shoot one look, one model for an hour. And that really is usually too long to shoot one look and one model. So then I have to be like, hey, I think we got it. You know, we have to move on. And some photographers, they really don't like that. But, you know, we have to shoot 8 looks and it's like already 3 p.m. and we've like only done 1. There are some photographers that I work with where I feel like they're looking to me to let them know that they got the picture. So it's really just like a very personal thing that, you know, there are also some photographers where I feel like I have to really heavily art direct what's going on. Because I see them like trying to find the picture and they can't find the picture. So then it's like I'm there like helping them find the picture. And there are some photographers who they like know exactly what the picture is. And once they get it, it's done and it's done. They call it. So it depends how you work as a photographer.
Another online question here. So with regards to turning in the photos and the retouching, do they turn the photos into you and then does the retouching happen by the retoucher, or is it they go to the retoucher first, then they go to you? What's that process and what do you like to see? Because you mentioned it before, but it actually sounds confusing when there's the retoucher involved.
Right. So how it works is you will have the pictures that we took and you'll make an edit. So say we shot 300 pictures of a girl in a red dress. You're going to pick your top 10 favorite pictures. If you only like 5 pictures, then only send 5. If you only like, you know, if you like 20, send 20. I wouldn't send more than 20 of any given picture. It feels excessive. So you're going to send me the low res. So take your raw file. Say you're shooting raw. Take your raw file, you process it. So it's a low res JPEG and apply basic adjustments. Like if you shot in a room and you lit it and it's like a little yellow or whatever, just make sure that it's like color balanced the way that you want it to look and that, you know, the contrast is somewhat is okay and it's bright enough. You don't have to do like skin retouching or like making sure the shadows have a particular blue hue or whatever. None of that complicated stuff. Just do your own sort of basic adjustments, then turn them into low-res JPEGs, then send them to me. I then am going to print them out as full-page pictures and show them to my creative director or my editor-in-chief and say, these are the pictures. We'll pick what pictures we like. Then they'll go to the art department and they'll get put into a layout. And sometimes in the layout process, maybe that picture that you really liked that you picked initially doesn't necessarily work. So then you put in a different one, whatever. Ultimately, say it's an 8-page story, we'll pick 8 pictures. Then I will email you as the photographer and say, hi, here's our retouching order. And I'll attach the pictures that we're going to run. Sometimes I'll attach the layout if we've done things like extend a picture so that the model isn't in the gutter, for example, like in the middle of where the page breaks. Like sometimes we'll move her to the side and then extend it. So I'll say, hey, we extended this, or hey, there's a wrinkle in that garment. You know, can you smooth that out? Like sometimes there are specific retouching notes, or that water is a little brown. Can you make it more blue or whatever? And then you will communicate with your retoucher if you're hiring one. A lot of photographers also do retouching themselves. You'll send those pictures to your retoucher with my retouching notes and any of your notes too. And then I'll say, hey, can we have these final images with match prints, which is another thing, you know, in 2 weeks or whatever. And then you'll say, yeah, that's fine. So then in 2 weeks, you're going to send me high-res files and also prints that are like proofs. So what happens with these prints is that then our production department matches, because obviously the color of our magazine paper affects the way that the colors in your image look. But if we know what the real color is that we were intending based on this print that you provided us with, we can then apply adjustments to the file to match that color to our paper, which might be a little yellow or a little gray or a little whatever. So that's usually the process. Was that clear? Yeah. Okay.
Wow. So probably got time for 2 or 3 more questions. So.
In terms of submitting work to you, in terms of a personal preference on your part, you get an email. Do you prefer having an attachment, a slideshow, or just a couple cut and pastes of sample work to the email? Or when a sample is sent to you via the mail, a couple of 5x7s or 8x10s, or would you prefer a glitzy pet presentation?
I think it's best if you can see the pictures right away. So I think I would just put, small attachments, like small picture attachments into the body of the email. So then I open the email and I immediately see the pictures, and then also include a website link. And in terms of promos, I really don't think it makes a difference or is worth the money to make like a whole big exaggerated promo. I think you can just send simple 5x7 cards. I like it when photographers send like postcard size, but in an envelope, so there's more than one. It's really hard to present all of your work with one picture. So if you send like say you send 2 or 3 postcards, but in an envelope, so then I open the envelope but you have to rely on me opening the envelope, which I will, but other people won't. So maybe it's good to send a postcard on its own so somebody sees your picture immediately, and then also send some postcards in an envelope so that there's more than one picture, but still you see it immediately.
About the shooting equipment for photo shoot, who ordering it and who pay for it, and I know how it works in my country, and I want to know how it's work here.
So for equipment, usually, again, it depends based on the photographer, but I'll tell you the 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is you or your assistant email me a list of the equipment that you'd like. I then send it to the studio wherever we're shooting, or I send it to an equipment house for delivery to the shoot location. That's option A. Option B is you contact, and option A, I pay for it, not you. Option B is you send your equipment list to the studio where we're shooting, or to an equipment vendor to send it to a shoot location if we're not at a studio. And then either you can decide to pay for it, or you can have me pay for it, because usually I'll have an account at almost anywhere. If you say I'm doing a shoot for InStyle Magazine, I'll have an account. Or you can ask me, hey, where do you have an account? Where would you prefer I order my equipment from? The upside of you paying for it is that you can upcharge me. So if I say my equipment budget is $1,000 and say you only need $200 worth of equipment, you can still charge me $1,000. So a lot of photographers work that way. We know it's happening to us when it happens. It's not like, we're dumb, but it's also like that's the way that the industry works. But if you can't afford to pay for it, it's a lot of money to pay up front usually. and magazines take forever to pay you. So you can also have me pay for it.
Yeah. So regarding this one, how is considered fair or not that I let's say I charge like a rental fee for some equipment that I already have, and I pay $1,000 to have on my own, you know, and trying to charge $200 by basically my stuff that I already pay.
Yeah.
Is that something fair that I can do as long as I have my equipment and only renting the new or extra, or is something like?
That's totally normal.
Totally normal.
Yeah.
Because I'm using my stuff, which is gonna worn out eventually.
Yeah, that's totally normal. I would say as long as you make sure to clarify what the budget is beforehand, and make sure that your equipment fits within that budget. But that's normal.
Awesome. And the final question would be, we kind of talked about things that people shouldn't do. What are the things that you like to see, or things that delight you that you would want to hire somebody again? And on that note,
I love when photographers come to me with a concept. And I love when they are like as obsessed with photography as I am. So I think sometimes you hire photographers and they just like want to show up and take the pictures, and that's not so fun. Like, I do this job because I want to collaborate with you, and obviously I'm a fan of your work. So I love working with people that like make me some whole like beautiful document. Say we have a shoot that we're doing and it's accessories or whatever, and they're like pulling all these images and they're coming up with like, you know, these accessories are going to go with these props, like in this you know, like they're really invested in it. Or when they have references of how we can shoot things in a new way. I love that too. Like, say there's a reference that's a painting of a particular pose. I really enjoy that. But I think primarily it's just that like I want you to be as excited about what we're shooting as I am, or at least let's pretend we are. Pretend with me that you're into this. I think that's really the biggest thing. I think it's also nice when photographers do realize that it's like somewhat a thankless job on my side. You know, like my name is never going to be the byline, even if I like picked, I came up with the concept, I picked what the rug was going to be, I told the model to pose like this, I told you how I wanted it lit, it's still going to be your name. So I think it's nice also to work with photographers who realize that photo editors are actually creative and photographically minded, and that it's fun to work together, basically. I like that mutual appreciation because I appreciate photographers a lot. And I think any photographer I work with would say like, that's definitely true, because I'm a total like photography fangirl. But yeah, I think, you know, show up on set, have command of the set, be confident, be excited about it, have good energy, like make sure everybody feels important because you're all working on this together. And then, you know, send me a reasonable edit of pictures that aren't too dark to see.
we're good.
Bye.